My name is Steve Sobenko. I work for a digital consulting agency called Nishtech. We're a Sitecore Gold partner. We're experienced over the past 2 decades delivering Sitecore experiences along with other DXPs that we support. So first and foremost, I want to thank Madhu and Bala for really what they do in this community and giving me the opportunity to speak. Bala, I respect both of you immensely. You guys are the gold standard of what it means to be an MVP in that program and the strength of the Sitecore platform and the sustainability across 3 decades here is really non-technical in nature. It's the strength of this Sitecore community and these user groups that come from advocates and champions that participate here, and I'm glad to be part of it. So thank you for the opportunity to do this. I'm not sure how long this presentation is going to take. It's the first time I'm doing this one, probably the first of many, hopefully, but I'll get right into it. So I realized that I'm going to change the title of this, and I want to change the title from how I built an Android app in under 4 hours to what and why. And what and why isn't going to have the best SEO, so we're not going to actually officially change the title of that. But if you were attracted to the 4-hour thing, that's cool too. You'll see how things came together in 4 hours. It's pretty simple. But I really wanted to talk about putting something on top of XM Cloud as far as a head application in Android. I chose Android because I can choose any mobile native environment like iOS, but I don't have a MacBook Pro that I'm doing development on right now, so you can't really compile and deploy to those emulators easily. So Android was just an easier option. However, we'll get right into it. Right? So this is our agenda for today. An introduction, XM Cloud headless, we know about that. Flutter, we may not know about that. My idea around bringing those two things together. I'll talk through the build and the demo, and then what I learned and considerations going through that process. And then you guys can ask some questions, and I have no guarantees that I'm going to answer your questions, but we'll see. So about me. My name, again, is Steve Sobenko. I'm a .NET developer. Started a long time ago. I've also done some native app development. And then back again to .NET and now into this headless space. I am the Senior Director of Technology over at Nishtech. I lead the engineering practice, and I'm the DXP lead. I started coding 25 years ago. My first Sitecore project was on Sitecore 5.2. I've been Sitecore certified for that continuous 18 years up until the present on XM Cloud today. I'm an expert in nested AP or ASP repeaters. If you have any questions on that, I'll answer your questions on ASP repeaters. I have 2 published iOS apps in the iTunes store written before Swift in Objective-C. I have an Android app as well for clients. I have 2 apps written in PhoneGap on Cordova, which was a build once, deploy many solution across iOS and Android. I have 1 BlackBerry Storm app. Yeah, I did that. And also I have managed support contract and 24/7 critical support for 2 little boys, 2.5, a little over 2.5 and 10 months old. These are my boys in the picture here, Henry and Teddy. So that's my life, and that's about me. So we're going to start off with some fun before we get into the super serious solution and coding and demos and just more about me. And while you hear me talk, you'll see that you'll see what I say I do is I am heads down coding all day. And what my clients think I do is I'm some kind of wizard that launches rocket ships. And what I think I do is I can give presentations and hang on stage with these 2 gentlemen and be in their elk. But what I actually do is PowerPoint and Excel all day. What I never get to do, it's past 5 o'clock, is build an entire deck filled with memes. So you're going to be subject to that today. And I thank you for sitting through that. But this is not a meme. Sitecore XM Cloud and headless, right? We talk a lot about Sitecore XM Cloud in this space and in this meetup in this community. And we talk a lot about the advantages of headless. And we have a few people here on the call. I just want to ask, what are the advantages of headless? We hear all the marketing where, but maybe we can get some people to chime in and say, like, what are some of the advantages of headless? All right, I can tell you.
I can
Great,
chime
Ray.
in.
So go ahead.
Sure. Like platform agnostic. So being able to integrate with multiple platforms, having ways to optimize speed of like performance of the app overall. Those are two things that come to mind.
Yeah, those are great. So for me, there's a couple things, and Graber, you hit on a couple of those. We see a lot of different themes on headless implementations for XM Cloud. Specifically on Sitecore, we see more Sitecore upgrades. Graber, you hit on the performance around Lighthouse scores, and we have modern frameworks that we're using with React and Next.js, reduce hosting costs and ROI on that, hosted in the cloud, less DevOps time, and then also we're composable, so a little bit of reduced cost around integrations. The one thing that we all say is omni-channel distribution. And Graber, you said that as well, to be able to distribute beyond just the web into mobile and kiosks and other things that can consume your GraphQL, right? So I want to focus on that. We say that it's sounds cool, it's buzzwordy, it's strategic, but how many of us are actually doing that, especially in XM Cloud, right? Um, what about Sitecore itself? Anyone that's in XM Cloud and Sitecore Pages, that's the new hotness, right? Sitecore XM Cloud, Sitecore Pages is a lot more performant. It's easier to use. It's a huge upgrade to the experience editor and the old content editor. I'm also told it's not called Pages anymore because they're having SEO problems with that. So I think it's called Page Builder. Classic Sitecore, right? But I want to talk about omni-channel distribution. We see in Sitecore Pages different viewports. Well, it's Omni Viewport. That's helpful for sure. And authors love that feature. It was heavily inspired. Some might say stolen from AEM. I'd never say it was stolen, but let's say it's heavily inspired. And this is really good for authors to be able to preview their content and build their content across multiple viewports on the web, but not omni-channel, right? So let's talk about that. Sitecore Pages. First class support for Next.js and React in your rendering host. However, non-browser rendering hosts are kind of non-existent. Like if you want to use Flutter or native apps or have a kiosk, you're gonna need some serious custom wiring to see that in Sitecore Pages. You're not gonna be able to see it at all. You can't see it in preview, you can't see it in Pages, Experience Editor. You're kind of left to content editor. So we're going to expect some gaps here with being able to what you see is what you get there. And you don't get all the nice support that you get out of JSS support. So let's go headless. Let's go with the API first word salad. We have a lot of different terms around headless. To me, headless is truly headless, decoupled architecture. And a true headless CMS, the content backend, the body, your CMS, is completely separate from the presentation layer. The head could be the web, could be a kiosk, it could be a mobile app. And that content is delivered API first to the head, right? So we have our mock architecture, we have our decoupled architecture, we have all these new terms: pure headless, hybrid headless, visual headless. But in the case of non-web for Sitecore, we're kind of going headless. Like we have no guardrails, right, on JSS support or supporting libraries or editing experiences. We're in this case pure headless in my opinion. So let's talk about where we're going, right? So we want to build a head, and I chose Flutter. Flutter is an open source UI dev kit from Google. So you know they're probably going to get rid of it next year because that's what they do. But just kidding. It has some staying power, I'm sure. It's build once, deploy everywhere. That's the old buzzword, right? Multi-platform for web, mobile, kiosk, our desktop in a single code base and on a unified language. So Flutter allows you to have that build once, deploy anywhere. Also, every device has its own languages and nuances and IDs and emulators and runtimes. So it just makes it a lot easier to build in one language. And we've seen products like this before. PhoneGap, Apache Cordova, MonoTouch, Titanium, Accelerator, Ionic, Xamarin. You may be familiar with some of those tools. But Flutter is kind of the newest or top market share right now. So some things about Flutter and the technology behind it. It's using Dart, a modern, strongly typed language that is built on the Flutter engine. It's all widget and rendering pipeline based. So if you're familiar with how the DOM structure looks, think DOM. In this case, it's going to be built around a declarative widget tree in Flutter. And everything is a widget from layouts, containers, text, animations. And it's optimized for native. So it has smooth transitions and animations and everything runs at 60 frames per second. And it's also built on the Material UI, also called Material Design 3. There's a couple different terms for it. So it's built on this Material UI library from Android. So here's my thought, right? Like, let's talk about that omni-channel distribution and omni-channel delivery and what I set out to do. So I wanted to create a head application on mobile instead of web that we're all doing in XM Cloud. And I'm going to do it on Android because I don't have a MacBook Pro to compile in Xcode and iPhone. And I have an Android myself. I want to ingest the same exact GraphQL feed that my Next.js app is ingesting on XM Cloud. And in this case, I'm going to use the Verticals Play Store app, the one with the skateboarding guy. I'm not going to change any of the content, any of the placeholder structure. I'm not going to touch XM Cloud at all. All I'm going to use is that demo site that they give us. I want to render all of my components on my mobile device, mirroring that Play site with the skateboarding site, the basic site. And I'm going to create what I need to do to make that work is create a mapper of components and a suite of components that mirror my Next.js components, but in my Flutter Dart components. I'm going to do it in Flutter, as I said, because that's portable and easy to build and maintain. And I'm going to tinker and have some fun doing it. So as Linus would say, show me the code, right? End this slideshow, I guess. No, I'm not going to end the slideshow. What am I going to do? I'm going to end the slideshow. And I'm going to pull up VS Code here. So this is what our project looks like. If we just instantiate or initialize a Flutter app via the command line, it's going to give us a nice structure to our code. Right off the bat, we see our different devices that we're supporting. We see Android, we see iOS, we see a lib folder. We'll get back to that. We see Linux, we see Mac OS, we see web, and we see Windows. So these are all of the these represent all of the native app support for the hardware deployments that we can do through Flutter. Now, we aren't going to touch any of these folders. We're not going to expand any of those. But if you needed to do something device specific, like access a sensor or hardware that only exists on a device like a particular version of an Apple device or Android device, you would do it in there. However, for us, it's that build once, deploy everywhere. That's going to be the lib folder. So in the lib folder, just immediately, what I'm going to do is expand every single file of my project. And there's not much. There's a lot that's given to you as part of this framework for free. So other than some of my meta files around how Flutter packages are added or manifest files telling me how to build, we're going to focus only on this lib folder. Main is a very simple file. This is our entry point. And this is where we're gonna build our one stateless widget. Think of this as a single page application as far as how widgets are deployed and kind of stack on each other. That's the way I kind of think about it. We're going to very simply just give it a title, a theme. We'll talk about the theme in a second, and our one home screen. So looking at our folder structure, we have a couple different folders. We have a folder called GraphQL. We have our screens, we have our theme, we have our widgets, and we have a component renderer, which is our mapper. Right off the bat, let me talk about theme. Theme thinks global CSS. So in here, all I'm doing is applying a global theme to our entire app. So right off the bat, very simple. Our theme here is defined here, and it's imported into our main app. The material UI is coming from Google. And then now we're going to jump into the home screen. Our home screen is one big GraphQL query that we want to pull back what's coming back from GraphQL and then build what it tells us to build. So let's skip over to the GraphQL folder. We have one constructor here for building our client. And then I just have some queries here around, in this case, pulling back the home page and then all of the items that are associated to that. So that's all I want to do here is pull back that home page and then all the items associated to that, and then render it within my home screen. So here we go, right? This is building a series of nested children. As I said, it's a UI library similar to the DOM of nested objects or nested widgets. In this case, we're just going to nest children within inside each other as far as all of our widgets. The body is going to be that GraphQL return. This is loading that GraphQL and then the errors associated with it. So we can skip back to, let's pretend our GraphQL is coming back. Our JSON is coming back. And we're just going to traverse down the tree. We know what this looks like. You're going to go into the layout. You're going to go into the item, rendered, Sitecore, route, placeholders, headless main. So we just want to key in on that one main placeholder to say, what are all the components that are coming back in that main placeholder, and then render them within my app instead. So two things need to happen. One, I need to map all of the components that are registered in Sitecore, like my hero and my content and my header component, to a component within my library, and then build out that nested structure here. So very simply, I'm listing out all of the components that come back and then passing it to my component renderer, which is our mapper. So this is just a big switch file. We get every component that comes back from our GraphQL and we start mapping. If it's rich text, give me a rich text component and pass it my text. If it's an image, give me build me an image component and pass it the URL and alt text and any other properties that come with it. So this is a very simple demo, obviously. The header promo or the hero promo, I only built a couple. And then down here, I also want to handle nested placeholders. So if what comes back is a placeholder, I started to get a little fancy and I'm building columns, and really all this is some decoration around the placeholder so I can kind of see the nesting happening by seeing like it visually nesting in my experience with some shadow boxes. But basically recursively calling this mapper file with every component that comes back as I traverse that tree. So I'm just going to continue to call the component renderer and map components, and which leads me to the only thing that's left is my widgets. Now I only built like 5 widgets or so. So if I have a 50 or so components in my library, I might need to go and build 50 components depending on if I want them showing up in my native experience. In this case, let's look at something like the promo component. So this is our widget that we define in here. It's going to have, again, you're just nesting children of widgets within children. So it's just the nesting of those, of that tree. We're going to have an image and we're going to have some HTML. This is where it gets a little tricky because HTML is not meant for native apps. It doesn't know what HTML is. It doesn't speak that language. That's for browsers. So we have to kind of go through here and say, all right, like as we're starting to digest this HTML, like I want you to render the HTML, but when you come across an H3, you probably don't know what an H3 is. So I'm going to define my style of what I want an H3 to be in my native app. Or if you come across a paragraph tag, I want it to look like this. So as your HTML objects come back, if you have a rich text editor come back, you're going to need to handle them in a way that your app here knows what that means. Great. Let's run it. Let's see what this looks like. I'm going to call Flutter run. And the VM is a hog, and my laptop is not meant to handle hogs. So we're going to see what happens if this crashes. Then we're out of luck. But where's my... Great. So here's the emulator. You see it firing up. You saw an error go by. It was not an error. It's just telling me that I'm one level or one step behind on my SDK. Great. Here, we just loaded this thing. So all of that code, I walked through all of that code, less than 15 minutes. And what we see here is our exact content coming from our GraphQL endpoint on Experience Edge, our preview environment on my XM Cloud site. And we see our skateboarder load, and we see our news objects load. And we also see that nesting of those placeholders where I wanted that shadow box popping up here. So we can see it's iterating over all of our news objects, and it's iterating over all of our placeholders. And with a little bit of code, we got it to show up within the experience. So that's cool. But now what? I'm going to hop out of the code because I'm kind of done with the code. Go back to... I still want to share that screen, but I want to display settings, swap. Oh, it's going to make me go through all of this again. Super. Got it. There's a screenshot just because I was nervous that my emulator was going to crash my machine. But what did we learn here? Well, I thought what I built was pretty cool in the limited amount of time that I built it in. It's pretty satisfying to see something show up on the screen in an emulator, or even if I plugged in my device, happen so quickly. But what I thought I was building from the get-go didn't really turn out to be that useful in the end. So what it wasn't, I'll tell you what I learned is it probably was, maybe it was a good idea to begin with, but like your mobile app is not going to be a second screen or an X screen of your experience as a mirror of your website. I don't think that makes sense after I started building it. Your mobile screen needs to be its own experience, its own head that's delivered from XM Cloud. But the HTML is coming for the HTML. The content is coming from a different part of the tree. And maybe your components and your templates don't make sense because some of that HTML that's coming back really needs to be handled in a one-off way, and it really makes the app like not understand what HTML is. So maybe that's not a good idea to deliver HTML to an app. Maybe deliver unstructured content to the app. And also, while the DOM makes sense with our placeholder structure, it didn't really make sense for my iOS or Android screens because I have a more simple nested structure. So maybe I should just have a completely different set of layouts and not mirror my website and have my own placeholder nesting and build it like that. And the one-to-one component mapper was fun until I realized, like, okay, what did I say? There's 50 components in my library, and I built 4. So what am I going to do? Build 46 other components, and now I'm maintaining 2 different component libraries. I didn't think that that was a good idea. I think that um, maybe I might want to build 1 or 2 of them, but building every single one really didn't make sense to me. If you really wanted your mobile app on web to look like a mobile app, you can make it a PWA and wrap it, and it can be a mobile app. But for me, your native app maybe is something a little bit different than just a mirror of your website. Your website has a good mobile presence, leave it like that. So this is what I think it should be. Make a different node for your mobile app. I didn't do that. I learned that I should do that. So if I were to do this again, I would make a different node in my tree. So here's my vertical site, my basic site. We have our home item, right? Make a completely different site for it, or in this case, item tree, right? And make that dedicated to your mobile app. And then you can make a different layout structure with different placeholder structure that's a little bit more native app friendly. Maybe you have 3 placeholders in here for app content, status bar, and ribbon, things, language that's familiar only to native app development. And other ideas and some musings that I have around that is the use of shared data in your global folders. You have to use it with caution. You have to warn your users if you're putting items, using items from your website tree, users might not know that that content is used for a mobile app. So maybe use some display names or field names to flag usage to content authors that you're feeding this content to a mobile app. And I also realized if we're true pure headless, if I were to use that term, and there's no layout associated to your content, and layout is what's connected to your data source, but you're just delivering your data source to the GraphQL endpoint. Well, now Sitecore doesn't know where that data source is being consumed other than on the edge. It's not linked to anything. So you're not going to have all that nice stuff around deleting an object and saying, or an item, and it's saying, hey, you deleted an item and there's links to this. What do you want to do? Right? Like warning you that something's using this item, like your mobile app. In this case, links aren't going to work at all in the Sitecore links, right? It's not going to warn you that it's being used because it's not tied as a data source. So just things to be aware of that I was thinking of if I took this to the next level. It's API first. It's decoupled. And then in the process of building all of this in the last month or so, the Sitecore Marketplace came. So going back to our Omni viewports that we're looking at, I think what we're working on here at NishTech is a viewport that's showing you iOS or Android that allows you to preview or have that emulator render in that experience. A little tough because it's not web-based, right? So I don't have a rendering host endpoint to hit. I have to use some trickery with VMs and the way that like browser stack or something like that renders the emulator within the browser so that the rendering host can show up. Just a way so that we can have in Sitecore pages that representation of things outside of just the web view. Some things to know specifically about iOS. So that was cool, but I don't think it's going to work with Apple. Or because maybe we'll with Android. It's squishy. So your miles may vary here depending on what you're trying to do. If you try to make a CMS for mobile, the way that I did, with XM Cloud as the backend, and the entire experience loads from the presentation details as a white label, you're going to get banned. The iTunes store is going to reject you outright. So you don't do it. You can do it with test flight if you're doing internal licensing of and certifying the app, and you can deploy it locally, but you can't rely on the App Store because they have some pretty harsh rules around white label sites if you try to load just a shell of an app like a CMS and it loads all the content. So a little bit of gotchas there from Apple. Like I said, they changed their policies, so your miles may vary. But otherwise, it was pretty fun to build. And I think that you can selectively build things into your native app that pull from your GraphQL endpoint from XM Cloud. And I think it can be a powerful experience for it. And that's it. If you want to get in touch with me, or if you have any questions, and I will be at Symposium this year, so we can stop by our booth and we can talk. Thank you.
That was perfect, Steve. Thank you.
Any questions or anything
Really
anybody wants
enjoyed the
to talk
humor
through?
with the
Did you use Flutter for anything else before this project?
So this was my first attempt at Flutter, but like I said, I've used Cordova and PhoneGap in the past, so I'm familiar with that build once, deploy everywhere. But this was my my first rodeo with Flutter. It's pretty simple. I got up and running pretty quickly on it. Documentation is quite nice, and it's some of the CLI is quite nice. So if I misspoke about some things, I'm learning.